is Jackie Miller, your host of Out of Crazy Town, your guide to divorcing a narcissist. I am so very grateful to the guest on this episode for sharing her story with us. Sara joins me to talk candidly about her marriage, divorce, and custody battle with her ex-husband and how she is doing today. Listen in as we talk about love, joy, heartache, and the fears and struggles of raising a child with someone who is determined to keep their victim in the crosshairs of post-separation abuse. Hello, Sara. Thank you so much for being on Out of Crazy Town, your guide to divorcing a narcissist. I'm super grateful, just so the audience knows, we have a guest on that is willing to share her story with us. And so I just want to, again, give you so much gratitude for coming on and sharing, because so many people out there really benefit from hearing other stories and just sort of the validation of what they're going through, knowing that there's, a group of us out there that get what's happening. And there could be a light at the end of the tunnel sometimes. So Sara, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So, okay, I thought I would go ahead and dive in, Sara, if you don't mind, to the beginning of your relationship, because I don't know your whole story. We sort of randomly crossed paths and whatnot. And I know I got a little bit of it, and you were so gracious. I said, oh my God, will you please come on and tell people a little bit about your journey? I like to kind of go back to the very beginning when you guys met and see how these relationships transpired, because I think for a lot of us that for many reasons, one, it's the validation of understanding what you went through. Two, we try to learn from it. And then I have a lot of folks, clients, et cetera, that are trying to move forward in life, maybe in date or look for other relationships, and they're worried, they want to learn about what happened. So do you mind starting kind of at the beginning?
Sure. Yeah. So it is very similar. I've listened to your other podcasts, and it's funny because I really hadn't pieced together the puzzle in my own relationship. And in seeing and listening to your stories, I've realized that the patterns all pretty much fit, and he very much falls in line with this narcissist title. But early on, I was probably mid-20s, living in New York City at the time. We met through friends, and it just, boom, took off. He put me on a pedestal is really what he did. And as a kind of mid-20s girl who was maybe a little bit, I had my career, I knew what I was doing, but I still think of myself maybe as just being young, naive, a little bit of a lost girl. And he really was like a security blanket, like took me in. He was like super warm, cozy. What can I do for you? You're amazing. You're such an accomplished person. Like really made me feel like nobody had ever made me feel before. And I would say that he sort of I felt like he designed our relationship to make me feel like we were working towards something together. Like, hey, this is unique. I'd say from his career standpoint, he was ambitious, but he hadn't realized any major success yet.
Okay.
And he made me feel like we were going to take this journey together, and we were going to do something really unique and special. So that was the early days. And I felt it. I was in. I'm like, yes.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting because what you just described, which is what most of us go through, is the idealization phase, and pedestals exactly what happens. You are perfect. You're amazing. They've never met anyone like you. Yeah. And you're just like, whoa, this is finally somebody who appreciates me. This is fantastic. Totally. And it's part of the face of the narcissistic abuse cycle. So I'm not surprised, but I am very interested to hear your story. So then, when did you, I guess, start to see red flags, or when did things start to turn?
So kind of fast forward, we get married, I get pregnant, and then I have our daughter. And that's when there was this very slow and sort of insidious fall from grace. And it was quiet and not immediately noticeable maybe, but basically, I kind of describe it like he had an axe pick and he would just sort of slowly chip away at me so that the pedestal started to slip. And I would say simultaneously, he was in his career realizing success for the first time.
Interesting. Okay.
And I called him, like, this was his meal returner phase, which was like, we would go out to, I'd get a babysitter and I'd be so excited about going out. And he would order like the most expensive thing on the menu, which like was really uncomfortable for me because we had not lived like that prior to this sort of newfound success he has.
Okay.
And he returns the food, right? Oh, pretty much always. If a nice steak, let's say, comes, it's not good and it's not cooked correctly, he throws like kind of it's a tantrum almost in the restaurant. I'm super embarrassed. Or I always say like it was his mean to customer service phase. Like if you got and you didn't give him the right hotel room or whatever, it was like, oh my, so scary. Like to hear.
Oh my God, Sara, I wish I didn't know what you were talking about. I'm feeling the gut wrenching feeling right now. I know exactly what you're talking about. Okay.
Yeah.
The mean to customer service people. Yeah. Is so a thing. Yes. Okay. Sorry.
I don't know why I didn't think that, at some point that might turn to me, but of course at this point I'm still thinking we're in this together. And, I am not seeing that while he's going up, I'm sort of slowly slipping down. So he tells me, for example, I really don't find you sexy anymore. And like, that was just devastating to me. And he starts to withhold sleeping with me. He won't sleep with me, which like, that sort of chips away at like my femininity, what makes me a woman, right? Like my power as a female, he's now sort of taken from me.
100%. Yes.
He says stuff like, at this point I'm full-time with our daughter. I'm a sort of new mom phase and tired and unsure of myself. And he's sort of like, I really think you should hire help. I don't know if you can do this on your own, so sort of, again, sort of chipping away at that point, like my fundamental ability to function, right?
Yeah. You're a woman, you're a mom, you're excited. You have this baby, you're supposed to have this new beautiful family. And yeah, you're chipping away, like you said, at your feminism, not sleeping with you, and insulting your basic core love and need to be the most wonderful mother in the world, and basically telling you you're not capable.
Totally. Kind of a big red flag was, I remember our daughter was taking a nap. It was the middle of the day. He was working around the clock. Like this was, his passion was now in his career.
Okay.
I remember he calls me up in the middle of the day and he says, I'd like you to open a trading account in your name, but I'm going to be operating it. So he was legally not allowed to day trade, but he wanted me to open an account in my name so that he could day trade in my account. And I remember like thinking like, that's way illegal. Like if that ever were to be somehow investigated, my name is the one that's written at the bottom of the piece of paper and I'm going to jail. Yeah. And so I immediately sort of push back and say, gosh, I really don't feel comfortable with that. And there was like this anger of like, how could you not do this? Like, one, because we could make so much money, but also like, why do you not trust me? And I remember thinking like, oh my God, this is the father of my child. And I'm having like this moral impasse, which the reason this was such a big deal is because later on, he ends up using moral bankruptcy. That was like his term that he ends up applying to me and saying that I'm the most morally bankrupt person on the planet. And we'll get to that. But I remember that it was like this moment where I didn't understand that whole concept around narcissism, where you project your own things, right?
Like they're like admissions of their own guilt is what they project.
Yeah. So this was an example of, his own willingness to completely throw away moral sort of code and potentially put me in a lot of trouble, but will be the thing that he ends up kind of trying to use against me later.
And, that to me, it's interesting because as I'm hearing this story, because you're now clearly have gone into the devaluation stage, right? So now he's devaluing you, he's putting you down, he's insulting your, motherhood. And now he's put you in this position where you're legally screwed.
Yeah.
if this gets found out and you're trapped. And because isolation also happens in this phase. And to me, that's almost a form of isolation. Like, you're screwed if you try to leave me, I've got major leverage over you.
Totally. Yeah. It's interesting. You mentioned the isolation thing. That was definitely, I felt very alone during this whole thing. And eventually he goes on to cheat on me. And that was a horrible story.
Please share.
Gosh, it was, at this point, we're not sleeping together. Things are clearly not working out. And I think we both sort of know that things are falling apart. But I remember walking down the hallway, and we lived in this like tiny little place. And I remember catching out of the periphery of my view, he was putting on a suit jacket and sort of like checking himself out, which was like unlike him. He would never care what he was wearing. Like, he always was, it didn't bother him too much what he was wearing, but he was clearly like concerned about how he looked. And he was going on a business trip to New York. And I called my mom and I said, hey, I'm going to go surprise him in New York, because we had moved away from New York at this point. Okay. And I'm going to go and surprise him. And can you watch, our daughter? And I remember I booked a ticket and I knew where he was staying. He told me he was going for a conference and we were going to stay at the Ritz-Carlton Battery Park. So I just had a feeling from the very beginning that something was off. I don't sleep the whole night. I'm on an early morning flight to New York. I don't sleep. And at like 3 a.m, I just get up and I call the hotel. I call the Ritz-Carlton Battery Park, and I said, hey, is so-and-so there? They're saying, no, he's not staying here. I said, oh my God. Okay. Well, is this in this conference going on? Because I was told that that's what was going on. Remember, I'm like going to be boarding a flight in a couple of hours, and I'm planning on heading to that hotel.
Yeah.
And I'm surprising him like that. He has no idea I'm coming, but I'm coming. So they say no. So that I know where he really likes to stay. So I end up, it's like such a hard story to tell, but I end up calling that hotel, and sure enough, they connect me to his room, and a girl answers the phone, and it's sort of early morning, like, hello. And I just hung up. It was like,
I'm so sorry.
Just, in my stomach, the adrenaline, the feeling that's going through, like, wow, okay, this is really happening. Get in an Uber, go to the airport. And I realized, like, there's no way I can board the flight. Like, there's no way I can sit for 5 hours and confront him. And I just can't do it. So that was the straw that pretty much broke the camel's back at that point. And he moves out. Okay. And I think he genuinely thought that maybe it would be this sort of temporary, we'd move out and fix everything, and then he'd come back. I actually do think he thought that. But I'm starting to, once that Band-Aid like is severed and he leaves, that's when it starts to become like real for me. And as scary as it was, like, I think I was telling you when you and I first talked, like, I think when you're at such a low point, that as much as you think in that moment of like, oh, he cheated on me, screw him, I'm out of here, I'm leaving, it's actually deeply shameful. Like, I didn't want to tell anyone. I was so scared. I was so alone.
It's embarrassing.
It is. It's like, it's your family, right? It's like, I wanted to protect my daughter, and it's like you're deeply protective of this little thing that you are holding on to that doesn't really even exist, but just right. I couldn't bear to tell anyone. In fact, I didn't tell anyone for probably a couple years after, because it was so hard for me to go through. But
wow. And so then he moves out, and do you file for divorce?
So he did. He was really in charge from day one. And I think that was another thing I shared with you, is I always, starting from that point, well, actually, I guess you could say it was from the point that he started chipping away at me, he was really in charge. And he took control over everything. And I never felt like I was on equal footing. I always felt behind, 10 steps behind whatever he had planned. And we tried mediation. So it was the first thing, like, okay, let's copacetic. We're going to be, we're going to do our part to do our best for our daughter, and very noble on our part. And I feel so bad when people tell me like, oh my gosh, we're going to do mediation. Cause I'm like,
trust me, I know. Or I often get the call that's exactly what you said. So I started out and like it was going to
started out mediation, no lawyers involved.
He did the
And
same thing. It's going to be okay. He's going to be fair and
right.
we'll
Yep.
talk it through.
And I didn't even say anything in there. And, they're kind of basically going through high level stuff like, oh, you were made partner during, the marriage. Well, okay. So then, Sarah's entitled to half. And he like beads up with sweat. And you can see just this immediate transformation on him.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
He loses it. He starts screaming, yelling expletives, leaves, and walks out of the room. And they basically look at me like, good luck. So
yeah, he's not a mediation guy.
Not a mediation guy.
No.
So, I always say like the gloves come off when the financials and the preservation of those financials come into play, because his wealth became the only thing he cared about.
Yep.
And, I am a total mess at this point. And the only thing I care about is our daughter. So, I basically, again, this sounds so, because I was such a fraction of who I really was at that point, there was a lot of things that I did that I look back on and say, oh, gosh, who was that person? But I essentially basically signed away everything in hopes that he would let me have our daughter. And truthfully, he did. At that point, he was like, yep, you great, just sign here. You have our daughter. I'll walk away. I got literally nothing. I mean, it was
wow.
Child support was the extent of, which, again, looking back, I should tell you that pretty much after our divorce wrapped up, he retired. He lives this sort of extravagant, crazy lifestyle. And there was always a piece of me that was like, oh my gosh, I should have done this. I could have done, but I also didn't want any of that anyway. Like it was just, I wanted to just get away. I needed to get away.
And Sarah, I'm so glad that you're pointing this out. This is a huge dilemma that almost everyone that's now in the post-separation abuse phase, right? So I love how you described him beating up with sweat once they said she gets half. Once you separate, and then especially throw in money, and sometimes they get super hyper-focused on the kids right away. It's just, they all have their idiosyncrasies for how they develop the separation abuse. But it is like, this is all mine. None of it's yours. He told you basically how this battle was going to go if you were going to fight him for money. I mean, whether he said it verbally or non-verbally, I'm guessing you knew it could drag on for years. It would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, so it's a constant dilemma that people, weigh going through this. It's like, do I keep fighting, knowing that he will scorch the earth and spend $500,000 so that I don't get $10,000? And he might have gone that route.
100%. And he scared me. The emails, the phone calls, I was genuinely scared. I actually was scared for my life at one point, that because he had hired a PI and had me followed. Was really scary. I remember driving out to Palm Springs to go stay with a friend, and I had my daughter in the back seat, and I noticed somebody following me, and my heart is racing, pumping out of my chest. It's so scary. So I was scared. I was actually scared all the time. So I was happy to just sort of stay, hidden and just let me have my daughter, and I'll take whatever you give me. And that was sort of good enough for me. I didn't care. I will say that I had some little stroke of something still left in me, because I took up a friendship with a male friend who I had known for years and years. And he was somebody that I could just call and talk to. And because I had friends, but I felt like they were all new moms. They were like focused on when they're going to have their next baby, and I was in such a different world and such a different place that I couldn't talk to anyone about it all.
So lonely. Yep.
So lonely. But he kind of he just helped me feel a little bit normal. And I think I needed that so badly. And his companionship sort of just helped me to propel into the next phase of my life. And I actually met my now husband, and I remember writing down in a journal, and I know that the power of like written word is something that it's real. I wanted so badly for my daughter to see her mom at some point in a loving relationship and see how women should be treated and how what love is. I wanted that so badly for her. And I wrote it down and I just said, I'm going to find this for you. And that was my goal. And weirdly, I found it pretty quickly after.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And that was very awesome to just feel, first of all, like a woman again, right?
Yeah.
Just that part had been taken from me. So just to feel like a woman and to have somebody who in a different way didn't put me on a pedestal, right? It wasn't like that. It was just somebody who just loved me for me. And that was, I should say that if the gloves come off when the financials are in play, I'd say you really go below the belt when someone new enters the picture. And that's when a whole level of crazy town took off. And that
really,
yes. So
okay. So interesting. And when I want to go back really quick and point out something too, because like with the PI following you, going back to the post-separation abuse, it's so interesting because even if they weren't sort of stalker-ish in the relationship, that is such a common thing that one of the spokes on the wheel of post-separation abuse is stalking behavior. And it's the PI. I've had, GPS system, trackers put in cars of clients I've had, blatant standing outside of a playground, staring, death stares while you're playing with your child. I mean, I have stories that go on and on and on. It's a very scary thing. And I have also heard more than once, I was afraid for my life, and not that he was going to come barreling in the door and stab me or shoot me, which unfortunately happens. And that's a whole nother show. However, he'll hire someone. I mean, you're truly in bed at night, doors locked, checking windows 3-4 times. Like, I actually think this man is capable of this. And I have heard it so many times, Sarah. And so it gives me the chills hearing you say that. And so let's go ahead to the now there's the relationship and it escalates.
It escalates for sure. That's when, if all was sort of copacetic by me sort of signing away the financial aspect, then it became the new focus, which was now our daughter. And that, I believe, coincided with me finding somebody that I was happy and content with. I think that drove him absolutely crazy. And so then it was, remember that the moral bankruptcy story comes now into play. And that he just tells me that my bringing someone into our daughter's life made me a morally bankrupt person.
Wow.
And he would,
as he's having affairs in hotel rooms. And anyway, I know. Yeah.
But the way that he made me feel, it was like he could just, on a flip of a dime, I could feel like a tiny little shriveled up person. And so those things that he would say to me, oh, you're morally, but how could you do that? It made me feel like I was doing something wrong all the time. I questioned every single thing that I did.
It's mind blowing because here you are, like clearly we all know in here, you're him cheating plus all the other abuse. The marriage is over. He filed.
Totally.
Post all of this, you find love, and they are so good at manipulating words in the situation, and they know us so well.
Yeah.
And they know exactly which button to push.
That's exactly right. And he did every chance he could get, and still does to this day. He ends up, let's see. So, it's been many years. He ends up getting remarried as well too. I always joke like the poor man Sara, because her name was Tara. And
he likes rhyming words.
And she was my doppelganger, which was so weird.
Really?
Like, we looked identical. Every time I saw her, she would be wearing what I had been wearing the day before. And I thought I was crazy. And I'm like, what is going on? This is so bizarre.
Wow. I'm like, I have the chills. I'm freaked out and I'm trying not to laugh at the same time. I don't know what emotion I'm having, but because again, I have seen this sort of behavior before. And the interesting thing is Jackie Miller of Diagnosis, I haven't read this anywhere. It's coming from him.
Totally.
So her oh gosh, I don't even know where to start. Let me just say, I've seen this before so many times, and her dressing like you is actually abuse by proxy. He is weaponizing her and probably suggesting outfits, buying things for her. And she could be clueless. She could be joining in, like trying to help, because I'm sure he's told her the horrible person you are. And so she's on the bandwagon trying to save this poor man from this horrible relationship he had with you. So, but it's what I found is it's abuse by proxy, and they're weaponizing the new girlfriend, and it's just to get at you.
And it works, which is the worst part, because then I start, not only am I feeling like insecure because there's this lady now spending time with my daughter, but also I know that they have nothing but ill will towards me, the mom, right?
Yeah.
And so, I say that the gloves come off when the financials are at play. It's below the belt when you find someone new, but it's jugular when there's the girlfriend, right? Or the wife, the new wife, because then it's like, all bets are off. He's pitting her against me, like you said, which absolutely, I believe, happened. And there is just now like mind games. And unfortunately, it's all played around my daughter. So when this girl, Karis, comes into play, now it's 50-50. He demands 50-50, which I had no idea when I signed away all this stuff, that at any point, if a dad wants 50%, the court has no choice but to grant it. Now, did I try and did I fight? And I had what I thought was plenty of ammunition for him to not be awarded 50%. Let me give you some crazy examples.
Okay.
So they're both not working. They both are playing house, essentially. Like the Disneyland mom or stepmom dad thing is now like amplified to the nth degree. I will I'll sign her up for her sports activities, things that she tells me she wants to do. I'll sign her up. They will not take her if it falls on their days, right? So let's take the swim team example. So she loves swim team. Like the coach adores her. She's like this sweet, smiley girl. She loves going. She gets like the MVP and they're like, oh my gosh, you're so good at swimming, right? She loves it. They won't take her on the days that they have her, but they will show up and sit at the end. They will park 2 chairs at the end of the lane that she is in, and they will sit there and watch her on my days of her swim team practice, which I'm like, are you like, is
What
this
the
right zone?
bleep?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. If I do,
the creepy level on these are like off the charts.
if I do Girl Scouts, if she wants to do Girl Scouts, I'm going to help co-lead. Well, then she's going to be the cookie chair, right? So then it's like a competitive thing where everything has to be tit for tat. Only if it's on their days, it's impossible. They will not do anything. She won't be attending anything. She doesn't go to her sports stuff. She doesn't have play dates. She doesn't do her homework. I mean, literally nothing is happening over there except for maybe, they're flying for the night to go French laundry up in Napa and having, 7-course meals and then flying home. It's like, yeah.
That's normal. Yeah.
Oh my God. It just like, it breaks my heart though, because, all
Sara,
I'm thinking about is my daughter and how do I give her this normal life? And they feel like they're doing everything in their power to make it as unnormal for her as possible, but only because they hate me so much.
Right. And why? And why? And all of us ask ourselves, and why? And it's just, you're weaponizing your child just to hurt her mother, which is 10, 100, 1,000-fold hurting your daughter. And why?
Why?
You have all the money, you have the new wife, you have the life, you now have your daughter 50%. Why?
I don't know. But I do know that there is, you've said this in your podcast before, that it's a marathon, and that the patience that it ultimately required by me was to stay the course. I end up getting remarried to my now husband, who is an incredible human being, and we have 2 more children together, and just developed what I call just a normal life. Like, we didn't live extravagantly. We don't go on fancy vacations. I remember a friend told me, okay, if he's going to be this go fly by night, no holds a bar, luxury, why don't you just be the stay-at-home person? Like, why don't, when she's with you guys, You cook every meal together. You sit down at a table together. You do the things that, you had written down in that journal, which was just a family, just what you envision as family, just like give that to her. So, now flash forward, she's at the age where she can be more vocal about stuff. And they get more vocal. The more you play kids, I think the more it backfires. And she finally got the strength when, sure enough, he goes through divorce number 2 with.
Interesting. Okay.
Yep. She basically tells him, I don't want to be with you anymore. And at that point, he gives up. He's so focused on his now divorce, that he lets her basically live with me full time. And I'm with her all the time. And it's crazy to me, because I never thought this, all I ever wanted really was to just give her a normal life. And I had to wait and endure so much. Like, people that know genuinely what I went through are like, oh my God, you've been through hell, like,
Yeah.
I really have been through hell. But now I wear what I went through as like a badge of honor. Like, it's my secret weapon. And I'm very proud that I came out of it okay. And that, I didn't get stuck in that horrible place.
Right.
Because I think it can break you. It can really break you, or you can say, no, it's not going to, and find a different path.
Yeah. And that is truly the only power we have. And that's where we're grasping for control, since they're constantly trying to make us feel out of control. And you are absolutely right. And we're dealing with this family court system that makes no sense. And so where do we find control? And it's in our own mind, in our own heart. I love that you pointed out, and I love whoever the friend was that said, why don't you just be the family? That wins with children, hands down. They want safe. They love the togetherness. They love the sit down dinners. They love watching movies on the couch. That is what they want. They just want you to hold them and be quiet, or you to ask them about their day. And extravagant trips and money and big fancy houses do not win.
They don't. They really don't. And it has been so interesting to watch that play out, and to see. I mean, they did a real number on her, and it's been hard, but she is going to be okay. She's so resilient, and she's so strong. And to see that ultimately they sort of got what they deserved. And I hate to say that, but
right. They reaped what they sowed. It just is what it is.
Yeah, it just is what it is. You're right. And people always say, like, what advice would you give to anyone going through that? And it's what you have echoed so many times, is that it's just a waiting game. You have to be just patient, and you have to have grace, and you have to know, I think somewhere in the back of your mind, you have to know that it's all going to be okay.
Yeah. They can feel your love. They can feel your calmness. They can feel your sincerity. That counts for a lot.
Yeah.
And I do say that. I just say whatever, like, cocoon you can sort of make for them when you have them. And that feeling, it just true connection, emotional connection, because they're not getting that, and their other parent is constantly weaponizing them, and they feel that yuckiness. And I know it's so hard for parents sometimes, because sometimes they make a little headway, right? Because children get so confused, and they're like, I'm just going to say, in this scenario, dad's saying XYZ about you, and maybe they'll even be a little angry at you for this lie or this, and again, it's just that waiting game, and it's just keep giving that unconditional love, not making them feel like they're responsible for your feelings, which is what the other side does all the time, right?
All the time. Yeah. There's still, to this day, there's attempts to take little stabs here and there, and they still sting, but his power is mostly gone now.
Yeah.
And he's mostly, like, I feel at times almost sorry for him.
Yeah.
That's where he's at in his life. And the other thing I will say is, I do think there is something incredibly powerful about having love in your life, and having somebody that you love and who loves you just for who you are. Because I think when you go through the narcissistic relationship, you question everything about yourself and whether you're normal or you're okay, or whether you can even go on sometimes. And having somebody that just is there who loves you is so powerful. And it does take away the power of the narcissist still in your life, I think, because they cannot stand to see you happy.
No, I hate to say revenge because I don't want us spending our time thinking about them, right? And how to get back at it. However, let's not lie to ourselves. If there's a way to sort of put them in their place, it is by moving on, focusing on yourself, your child, being as successful, whether that's successful emotionally, successful in your career, successful financially, whatever it is, just moving on and going out and finding happiness is the best revenge.
It is. It's everything. It's everything. And I also wish that I had known about people like you. I don't even know if that existed.
I don't either those years ago. I don't either, because I feel like it was just coming to light even as I was going through mine, which I'm like only half the distance of you, I think, even less. And thank goodness there are more divorce coaches in high conflict specifically too, out there getting educated and using their experiences to help people, because we're slowly raising awareness. We're slowly getting official people out in the field that are there to help. And so it's turned a corner. So I know I'm sorry, but you're right. The era you went through this, there really wasn't any
there
help.
was nothing, and I was alone. And just to, if I had somebody to, first of all, recognize the patterns that I didn't know, like I really don't know that I would have even called him a narcissist until I started listening to your podcast, which is crazy, but he absolutely is. And to have somebody just like call out those things, just so you know that you're not crazy, right? And that you're normal, this person is just not, would have helped me so much.
Right. It's because, and going back to the beginning, the interesting thing that in listening to you describe yourself when you first met him and started the relationship, you were this successful, ambitious, you're gorgeous, you're like, you've got, the world at your fingertips. Now, with that being said, we all had, and it's interesting, I've had a guest on named Tracy Malone, who's written a book, and she's actually a colleague of mine. And she's the one who educated me on green flag. And so we were young, right? And didn't have our boundaries in place. And we threw up some green flags, which is, in other words, saying, hey, guys like him, I'm a good target. So we learn about those. But I do think it's so powerful to learn a little bit about yourself, what you went through, and you are so worthy of love. And you are that amazing person that they targeted. They targeted you because you were amazing. You're smart, you're intelligent, you're beautiful, you're caring, you were going to make a great mom. And they knew that, which is why it's so ironic and so horrible that, like, for instance, he tried to take that away from you. But we are amazing people. And it's like, the big joke is that it's a compliment if one comes after you. That's the sad
really
joke.
Interesting. That is really interesting to think about it. But you know what? You're totally right. Like, I actually think the things that he ended up hating me for are the things that he loved so much about me. Like, he did know I was going to be a good mom. He didn't have a great childhood. And I remember like almost feeling sorry for him and him saying like, oh my God, like he had never had, the fact that I could love him, he was so grateful for back then, I just,
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you certainly have endured a journey, and just also listening how he brought the new rhyming word wife in, Sarah and Tara. Oh my gosh, I love it. The poor man Sarah in, and again, it's something I often see, and they recruit a new one to weaponize them against you. And it sounds like they just had this awful team going. And you're right. How scary. Back to the court system. There's so much to know outside of lawyers, and actually that is a legal thing. Unfortunately, no one told you, but here you signed away the money thinking, okay, fine, at least he'll give my daughter and I some space, and then came back for 50-50. And California, many other states too, they're like, oh.
And I had all that stuff, and the judge is like, whoa, the swim team story is like, whew, that's pretty bad, and I'm like, I'll never forget that, walking out of that courtroom, and the new wife is sitting there and she had this smug like smile on her face. And meanwhile, like my knees are buckling, like I have my heart has shattered into a puddle on the floor, and I'm almost throwing up because I'm so sickened at this. Like I went from 80% to 50% in a second, right?
Mm.
And I was the person, maybe like it was extra hard for me, like walking by her bedroom door when there was no one in it, just in the middle of the night, like that, just it destroyed me. I was not a whole person when she was gone, and it was because I knew that she was in such a it was only to spite me.
Right. And I think, here's the thing also that I love about you pointing out that you're in a loving relationship and marriage now. It's like, I don't hate men. I'm in a loving, wonderful relationship. There are amazing men out there. So if you are out there and you're listening and you're thinking you do want to have another relationship someday, they are definitely out there. I am not pro-divorce. I mean, it sucks.
Oh.
So I'm not pro-divorce. Men are awesome. There are fantastic men out there. But if this podcast makes it to any decision maker anywhere, please just look for red flags. We would love for a great, healthy, loving dad to be in our child's life. Love it. It would be, I do not want to send my daughters out into the world with daddy issues.
Exactly.
That is the last thing I want. Okay. But he took your daughter, not because he wanted to spend time with her. He didn't. I'm sorry. He did not. He did it to get back at you. And now he had this new wife on his arm, and he used her to present well to the court, and it was just another way to get at you. And I mean, how is not taking her to swim lessons that she loves so much in her best interest?
There was nothing about what he did that was okay. And I kept on my phone a voicemail from Tara, who called me in the last 6 months and left me a message apologizing for everything over voicemail. Like, I am so sorry for everything that I did to you. I was awful. I mean, she basically just laid it out.
Wow. Do they have kids together?
They had one child together. And now, she called me right when this was all happening, and I took the call. Now, granted, she was dead to me the day I walked past her with her smug smile in that courtroom.
Yep.
But I was willing to take the call. And she asked me, so I just need to know, am I going to need to go to war on this? Is this war? And I said, yes, it is. You better go hire the best lawyer you can find, and you better get ready to fight. And I will tell you, she is going for it. I
mean, oh my gosh, this is like, I mean, I have to say, look what you did to Sara, and then you got Tara, and now you're in Tara rise.
He created a monster. I'm sorry to say, but she will take him down.
Well, yeah, and she watched what he was capable of.
Totally.
Like, yeah, and she knows she knows his moves. Oh, this is so we got to write a book.
You can't make this up.
You can't make it up. You can't make it up. Oh my gosh. Wow. So I went back to the court day. I know. And you get your child taken away from you. And oh my gosh, it's so heartbreaking. And then you come full circle to this conversation from Tara. And again, Sara, I just want to thank you for coming on, because your story has woven in and out and back and forth, and custody and no custody, and in the horrible new wife coming back to apologize to you. And I have a feeling he's probably still trying to pull little tricks today.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, always.
And the reason I point that out is not to discourage people that it's never, ever, ever, ever over with. However, something I mentioned to you before we came on to record was I have become extremely passionate, and I'm trying to study and learn every day about how we can control how much they get to us, and how we can control the level of our reaction and our reaction times, basically is what it boils down to. Because we need to protect ourselves, our nervous systems, our bodies, our minds. I'm convinced that, if it goes on too long, whatever your situation is, if you're having a hard time crawling out of the hole from the abuse, whether during, after, it's so hard on our bodies, and it's making us sick. and I've witnessed it, and it's not okay.
No.
And so I know it's something that I'm passionate about, and because we can't control them, and we've had children with them, or even if you haven't and you were just married, you're on their radar screen for someone for some reason that they need to target for the rest of their life and try to make feel miserable. And so we've talked about being successful, going on with your life, finding love, going after your passion, whatever it is. And that holds a lot of power. And then, I'm getting into a lot of meditating. I'm studying neuroplasticity and how we rewire our brains because of the trauma that we've gone through. And we've created these negative pathways, because it's another reason I want to thank you for coming on. We literally, unfortunately, wire our brains for these negative pathways, because you're forced to focus on these incidences and the things that have happened and are happening all the time. And so we have to live in crazy town. We have to live in negative town, and it doesn't ever give our body or minds that break that we need, or the opportunity to heal and move on. And so we've got to really focus on it and make it a priority, because that's where we're going to win.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's work, and it's work I need to continue to do. And because like you said, it doesn't go away. Even if you've reinvented yourself, he still has that ability to come in and just chip away a little bit if he wants to, and if you let him. And I am guilty of it, because it still bothers me. And I hate to say this, but I almost live in this space of like, ooh, things are kind of going really good. Like, what's around the corner? Like, is something bad going to happen? And I even told you the example before we started was, I was really excited about coming on and, hopefully inspiring this story, because it has been such a marathon, and ultimately, like, it's been really good. But then just yesterday, my daughter tells me a story of something, that he says to hurt me. And it hurt, and it was awful. And I hate that I still give him that space of allowing him to hurt me. So it's work that I think is worth doing, because you're right, it can eat away at you and probably make you very sick.
There's a lot of us out there working on it. And I love any comments, tips, tricks that anybody else wants to, to pass along. I'm on, Instagram, at Out of Crazy Town, and I post this on YouTube as well, the video versions. And so there's plenty of areas, to comment, but we have to all come together and collectively, put our knowledge and our experiences together and help each other. And, because that's the way out of this.
Well, that's why it's so awesome that you're doing what you're doing, and giving people a voice and a reminder of like, you can be strong and we can do this. And it is a collective thing, right? You can draw from the power of all these other women that have gone through this.
Absolutely. Oh, so again, thank you one more time, just to be extra redundant. It's so important I told another client that I was having someone on that was going to share a story. And she said, wait, what day is it going to come out? What minute, what second? Because she's years in, but you just can never get enough validation in like, you're not crazy and somebody else has been through it and it's going to be okay. So thank you so much, Sara.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jackie.
All right. Take care. And hopefully we'll talk soon.
Sounds good.
Okay. Bye-bye.